Well, my name's Matt Connolly. I'm from the UK. I run a Webflow exclusive agency called Paddle Creative.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll show Paddle Creative over so that everybody could see what your site looks like. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on here, and this is actually not your first time here, and we had a little mic issue the first time, but I appreciate you coming back because I know that you have a lot of valuable information to, give to new agency owners. So my first question would be, if you're starting out a Webflow agency or really any web design agency in general, what would be your number one piece of advice for new agency owners or freelancers?
As many a piece of advice I could give, I suppose my number one piece of advice, which I do myself a lot, is to make sure you have your systems and processes in place. So make sure that whatever you do, you've got to nail down a system so that you can productize and repeat what you do very easily and very repeatable. Just make sure that you document what you do and improve each time, iterate every time you get feedback from a client, and just keep improving and repeating on what you do.
Okay, so say that you started out with some client and maybe you have one project or maybe you don't have any projects yet. Do you think that your best bet for going to get new clients is to make maybe like a portfolio of some demo pieces, or should you try to target down to specific industries first? Like, what would be your first client approach?
Yeah, good question. So the way I did it was I just tapped into my network of friends and family. That's what I did, and that's what I would think most people would do. If that's not an option for you, you've really got to get yourself out there and talk to people and try and get a website under your books. Whether that's doing it for free or very cost effective. I think for most people, they're not going to go out on their first website or two and land it for $10,000. That's not going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you've got to build your portfolio up and build yourself up. So yeah, start out where you need to start and just over deliver. Every time you do a website, for the first, whatever website you do, but particularly when you're starting out, over deliver on value on what you do, and just make sure that the customer really sings your praises. That's the approach I took.
Yeah, I've heard the under promise and over deliver saying quite a few times in the web design SEO industry, and I think that it's it seems to be one of the really important things that you're not telling them that you're going to get them number one on Google, they're going to get all the clicks in the world, their business is going to be thriving, maybe it will be thriving, but the fact that you don't really want to promise that seems like one of the key things to keep in mind.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you do come across in the industry, there are a few, I'll show you, say, cowboys, where they don't necessarily deliver what they're going to promise. So if you can do the opposite and over-deliver, then you just stand out immediately.
Mm-hmm. So what's your process look like for maintaining an SEO campaign and like keeping clients happy over time? Like, how do you approach monthly reporting?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of our process, we structurize it all. So we have standard operating procedures in-house. So it's myself or a team member doing it. We know exactly what we're doing. We make sure we tell the client exactly what's going to happen and when. So we say month one, this will happen. And every month we tell them what's going to happen for each month. So their expectations are very clear. They're not expecting to go from 0 to position 1 in a month. In terms of reporting, video reporting is the way to go. So like a lot of agency owners now, we use Loom. Loom is, I couldn't live without it. I send more Looms than I do standard emails, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But so I Loom everything. I use the tools like SEMrush and the likes as Google Search Console, but most business owners don't really care about the PDFs, and they want you to tell them what's happening in a succinct manner.
Yeah.
So I send the reporting and the PDFs and everything. I talk them through it on Loom. I talk them through what's happening in the month, what's going to happen next, what the results are, and be honest as well. If it's not quite gone, the results aren't quite shooting up, tell them why and what you're going to do about it. But Loom is the way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, so far, what we've found is there's something special about like sending a Loom video, because it's like they aren't just reading an email or like answering some random question, but like they have a whole video that's personally made to them, and it just seems way more professional too, because you're able to go through the data instead of them having to try to pick out and understand what all these terms mean. Because it's
because they're not the experts, are they? And you are. So you've got to get across, tell them what things mean in even simple to understand manner. It's just a lot more personable. I tend to find clients really love when you send them a Loom. They're really impressed by that. You've taken the time to actually do something personal for them.
So that kind of leads me into another question. Now that we're talking about like web design and SEO terminology, it seems like one of the difficult things can be trying to have the client understand what you're doing and have them fully understand what web design and SEO means and what it looks like. How do you go about like portraying to them what it is and teaching them what they need to know to have them be a good client?
Good question. So there's a few approaches we take. The first one is education. So you've got to educate client right from the start. A lot of clients we have understand they need to have SEO. They don't understand why. So we will talk them through right from the sales process about what we can do and why we'll do it that way. That's the first thing. So you're educating them. They're not going to be experts, but they understand a few terms. The second thing we're doing is we're building out a resource center on our website. So whenever we send clients information, we'll put a link to what that means, what is a backlink. This is simple stuff. So they can have something to refer to if they're struggling with some of the terminology we use. And the third thing is the terminology, we try and make it simple as possible. They don't care about a lot of the acronyms and things you use in the industry. So it's just trying to simplify it where you can so that whatever you send them is digestible to a client. You've got to teach them in a certain way, educate them, but don't try and turn them into SEO nerds like myself. No, just try and take them to it so far they're going to understand it, but understand why we're doing it. That's what you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I always kind of like bring the reference of if you're going to hire somebody for construction or like an electrician, like you don't need to understand the technicalities of what they're doing. You just need to understand the end result. So one of the things I've kind of, thought a lot about was trying to portray to them the end result, which is getting more traffic, more leads, because that's like the language they understand from my experience at least.
And that's another thing as well, important point there, Dylan, is it's not about being number one on Google. I mean, that's good. It's about the traffic. So people often get confused by the aim of SEO is not necessarily getting number one, it's getting more traffic. Mm-hmm. So if you're increasing traffic and leads, that's better than being number one and getting no leads. So that's
like you aren't trying to get the gold medal, you're trying to, so you can get some sort of medal, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So I mean, number one is nice, but that's not the ultimate game. The ultimate game you're playing is to grow the business for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like you even need to get number one to get meaningful amounts of new traffic and leads. So can you go a little bit into the story of Paddle Creative and kind of tell us about what it took for you to get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I think my story is probably a little bit unusual compared to most agency owners in that most people, especially in the Webflow space, are designers first, and then they'll branch into web design, and that's often the way it goes in Webflow space. My background was about 15 years ago. I started out in digital marketing, so SEO and pay-per-click, so Google Ads. Then I loved that part of my job I was doing. It was in a different industry. So from there I started freelancing as a side gig, and it built up over time to a point a few years ago where I started Paddle Creative. But before I got to that point, I learned web design. I used to use WordPress, Wix, Muse, but then you get more developed, and then very early on, I didn't like any of those. Then when I stumbled across Webflow, I was like, whoa, this is brilliant. So Webflow became my sole platform of choice. I paired that with the digital marketing. So sort of any website I build, or Paddle Creative builds, we build it with the digital marketing side in mind first. So it's sort of built SEO ready and landing page ready and stuff like that. So so that's the story. And from there, in the last few years, the business has grown really well. Still growing, it's still nowhere near I want it to be, but it's getting that way and it's going really well as I think Webflow is growing, and we're getting a niche in the sort of SaaS section in Webflow for SEO and web design and build. So that's the story so far.
Awesome. So what is it that really makes Webflow stand out of all like the web design platforms? What is it that made you try all the platforms and end up saying, okay, Webflow is definitely what I'm going to be using here for my agency?
Yeah, good question. I think the other platforms all had, you're always tied into a theme or a template or something where it wasn't customizable. And the minute you tried to customize it, it created all sorts of problems in terms of the structure, the code. You got loads of junk pages that you had to sort of know index and things. It just hard work. And obviously platforms like WordPress are great. There's a lot of maintenance you have to do just to keep it running. Whereas Webflow, it just allows you that complete freedom, design freedom, SEO-wise, you can implement things really easily. For someone who does design, like myself, as done in the past, and I do, the design side is just incredible. I think people who use Webflow get that if they're a designer. But then also from the SEO perspective and what you can do with it from a sort of digital marketing perspective, it's just perfect. Allowing teams to build landing pages, hundreds of landing pages, programmatically, easily. So it's great. It's a great platform. And I've got clients across lots of different industries using it. It's been great.
Yeah, and it also feels like the community is like a growing part of it. Like as you said, everything you said is definitely true. Like it's the greatest platform for front end design and everything else when it comes to managing clients. But the community seems like it's growing really fast, and you have this feeling like it is going to be, the next big thing in terms of web design.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. If
you look at people like FinSuite, what they provide for the community. I know they've now got a paid tier, but the free stuff they still give is just incredible.
Yeah.
I know that's helped my business grow, but there's lots of other examples like that in the community, like Refocus and the like, who are just phenomenal for what they do. And the general community, if you've got a question, you can ask it and someone will answer it for you. You can be pretty sure of that.
Yeah, so where are some of the best places people can connect to the Webflow community? Would you say like Facebook groups or?
Yeah, so there's quite a few Facebook groups about. There's the Made Webflow Global, which is a great place to start. That tends to be why I stick my question first. There's a couple of Slack groups. So FinSuite's got a Slack group, which is worth joining. There's obviously the Webflow itself has got its own, I think it's a Discord, the forum you can ask questions on. But my go-to place initially is Facebook. If you don't use Facebook, I've heard Twitter's a good place to ask questions and do stuff. But yeah, there's also a LinkedIn page which is getting more and more active as well. So all the usual social channels are pretty good.
So one more question. How do you manage projects, and how do you go about managing your team when it comes to new projects and new SEO campaigns?
Yeah, good question. So what I have is we use Monday.com as a project management platform. There's lots of different ones out there. There's Trello, Asana, ClickUp, I know people use. I used to use that. But Monday.com allows us to see the workload, first of all. Secondly, it allows us to delegate things out and systemize things. But also, when we're growing, I know very quickly if we're at capacity or near capacity, and if I need to bring new resources in. I've got a network of people I can call upon now. I've got people who are employed by the company and also freelancers who work solely for Paddle Creative. But I know, like now, for instance, I know we're getting close to our capacity, so I'm probably going to have to bring more people on board soon. So I can see that from our project management platform of where the capacity is at, and that's crucial really. If you're going to grow, you need to know what you can do for your clients and what you can deliver. So if you're promising something, make sure you can deliver it and use the system to help you do that.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check out Monday.com. I'm not familiar with it really. I've heard of it, but not used it yet.
Yeah, there's lots of platforms out there. I've tried most of them. It's just the one I like because visually it's very colourful and it just works for me. I know a lot of other people use ClickUp, which is also great.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today, Matt. I really appreciate the call. And yeah, I'm sure everybody has gained something from this, to say the least. So,
nice to chat.